Hey, it's Matt from Hidden Machine. I just got done playing the first couple of hours of High on Life, the latest title from Squanch Games, led by Justin Roiland of Rick and Morty fame. I had an alright time with the game, and if you want to know more about what I think of it, you can check out the video link below to the stream where I give those thoughts in real time. But today, I want to talk about High on Life's use of AI-generated images. Now, I know this can be a very touchy or controversial topic for people, and a lot of folks are getting really heated over it, so I think it'd be useful to state ahead of time that I'm not here to argue or make a case for or against anything. I just want to talk a bit about how I feel about their use of AI in this game, and, I do have some opinions about the whole situation, but I'm not trying to argue, and I'm not here to argue. So if you have a opposing viewpoint, leave a comment. I'd love to hear it out. My views and my opinions on things are subject to change, and sometimes those changes come through hearing other people and their perspectives and learning and forming your new perspective based on the information you've received, like how that works. So that said, I do like some AI images, and I understand that even calling it AI art is, a messy, murky topic for a lot of people, but to me, they're AI-generated images. I've been using Midjourney for a few months now, and I have a lot of fun with it. And I'm not here to talk about the merits of, is it art, is it not art, is it ethical, is it not? I just want to say that I like using it. I've used it for projects. I also hire artists. I'm an artist myself. I, have worked as an artist, relying on that income, and I pay artists for art on my projects when I use them. But much like any other tool at my disposal, I sometimes use AI to do certain things as well, and I don't really see a problem with that for myself. But we're talking about how it scales up, across an entire industry and culture. So just getting that out of the way, I'm not against AI art, although I am cautiously accepting that it's a tool here for us to use. In a recent interview with Sky News, Justin Roiland said, "I don't know what the future holds, but AI is going to be a tool that has the potential to make content creation incredibly accessible. I don't know how many years away we are, but all you will need to be is somebody with some big ideas." The article goes on to detail how they used AI to generate certain images that are used as assets in the game. And they also used AI to prototype a couple character voices, and one of those AI voices made the cut and is featured in the game. I agree with Roiland that AI is a tool that can be used to make content creation accessible to everybody. And whether or not you feel like that's a good or a bad thing, it's coming, and it's already here to a large degree. High on Life is by no means the first game to use AI to generate assets. There's been a whole bunch of different examples of that sort of thing happening over the years, whether it was an internally developed algorithm or indie games using some of the more recent free to the public sort of AI tools. However, I do think that High on Life might be the first game of this size and scope that openly uses Midjourney specifically to create assets. Now, before we get too deep into this, I do want to state that it's obvious Squanch Games hired a ton of real people to do this game. There's artists, voice actors, designers, coders. People made this game. This isn't a case of they fired the whole staff and used AI to make the final product. In proportion to the overall amount of work done on the game as a whole, the AI part is pretty small, so let's not blow it out of proportion. Just said proportion, but let's not get out of hand with saying, oh no, it's a dire situation, they used AI, because I understand it's a slippery slope for some people, and for other people it's, oh, they put a couple funny meme posters in the game and used AI to make those, big deal. This game was both developed and published by an independent studio, Squanch Games, which Justin Roiland is the CEO of, so resources are a concern, especially if you're going to do everything in-house like that with the development and publishing. It's not an easy task, so I don't really blame them for wanting to do something that might make things a bit easier. And also, as you can see in the article, they do argue that there's some aesthetic advantages to using the AI art to make it seem a bit more alien and, unfamiliar in a unique way. So I know that so far it sounds like I'm just doing a lot of fence sitting and I'm not making any sort of statement on AI or the game or its use of AI like I said I was going to do. So let me get into it. I personally have no problem with what they did in this game. In theory, I think using AI to generate some images that you're going to put on a poster in the background of an environment, big deal, really. I maybe wouldn't do it myself, or maybe I would. It's hard to say, but I don't see anything wrong with that. However, the execution, I think, leaves a lot to be desired. And if you're going to be advocating for AI image generation to be used to make assets for a game, and you're kind of this big ambassador for that idea because, you're the guy that made Rick and Morty, and that's a huge deal to a lot of people, and there's likely going to be a lot more eyes on this game than there are a lot of, smaller indie titles made by solo devs who are going ahead and using AI to generate assets because they're doing everything top to bottom by themselves. It's a bit different. So you're kind of introducing this idea of AI generated assets to the biggest gaming audience that I think has been able to experience that sort of thing openly in a game like this. And again, I'm talking specifically about the use of Midjourney, these free to use, accessible to the public, complete open access kind of tools that anyone has equal access to. This isn't some special algorithm that the studio developed to make their own assets using a special code they made. And no, this is, I can log in, I can use Midjourney, and it's super simple. And just as an example, let me show you how simple it really is. I'll make a poster right now, and then we'll compare that to one of the posters made in the game. Okay, let's take a look. All right, so I'm here in Midjourney. I'm gonna type imagine, and I'm gonna say vintage movie poster for a horror film. Zombie graveyard. AR, that's aspect ratio. I want it to be vertical, so I'm gonna say 9:16. And now we're gonna wait. All right, and less than 2 minutes later, we have our images. So we get a set of 4 images here. And, I like this one on the bottom left. Okay, so we're gonna upscale that one, and we're gonna upscale the one on the bottom right. And what upscaling does is add a bit more detail to the image, and there's different algorithms for the upscaling to get different types of results, but it's basically going to take that preview image and create its own standalone upscaled image. The upscaling process takes about 3 to 4 minutes at most of the time. So to generate these 2 images, it took us about 5 or 6 minutes. Honestly, I don't think they look too bad, but I want to try one more prompt. I really like these silhouetted figures, so I'm going to throw the term silhouette into the prompt, and maybe we'll get a bit more focus on that, because I really like that aspect of these posters. And here we are, 4 more images. I like those bottom 2. I like the way they have the text on there like a real movie poster would. So let's go ahead and upscale those, and we'll look at everything we've got. All right, we've got my posters here. Now let's see how those compare to the ones featured in High on Life. After completing the game's tutorial, this is the first area that you'll see. You take control of the player, and they're in this bedroom where you can take a look at the walls, and you can see there's posters everywhere. It's kind of a focal point of the very first part of the game. You might notice that some of their posters have a bit more clarity on the text than my posters do. And getting clear, readable text without any sort of spelling errors or wonkiness to the letters can take a few different revisions of an image to accomplish, but it's not impossible, and it only adds a few more minutes onto the process. Or you might get lucky and the first image you generate could have perfectly legible text. Rendering small details like pupils, fingers, or letters can often be difficult for AI to get totally right, and this is something that we saw in the remaster of the GTA trilogy. There was a lot of AI upscaling done on the different signs and textures, and they just came out with weird typos or illegible text. And I think there's been a lot of work on the fan side of things to correct those and get legible assets in there, but that's another example of a big game using AI. Definitely a different use of AI. It's AI upscaling instead of AI generation of the images wholesale, but you can still see how there, if it's not applied with care, it can make your game look really bad. That said, I don't think these look really bad, but I do think they look kinda cheap, at least in terms of AI. So we know it takes maybe 3, 5, 8 minutes to make one of these posters, and you want to get a few different versions of it. You want to make sure you get the one you like, but it takes well under 10 minutes to generate one of these images. Probably more about 5 minutes if we're being honest. We have a few different style posters here, like the movie posters and some of these like character posters. Like this is clearly supposed to be G.G. Allin, and I went ahead and generated my own G.G. Allin posters. These are all just one take. I didn't do a lot of re-renders and variations or revisions. These took me about 2 to 5 minutes to create, and I think they're comparable to the ones in the game. And again, I'm not saying it's a bad thing that AI art is fast. I think that's actually a huge advantage to using it, is how quickly you can generate an image. That said, when you see enough AI generated art, especially made through Midjourney, you kind of get an impression for what's just the bare minimum of effort put into a prompt versus a prompt that came through a lot of experimentation and a really precise understanding of the parameters and different code you can use when interacting with Midjourney. While I understand why some people are hesitant or full-on against calling AI image generation an art, I don't want to get into that here per se, but I do need to state that it does take a certain amount of skill and knowledge to really craft certain types of images through Midjourney. Personally, I know that over the past few months, I've become a lot more skilled at creating certain types of images and getting the right composition, colors, textures, and everything that I want out of a picture. And that is something that I developed over the course of months. And you can take a look here at some of the very first images I ever generated in Midjourney versus some of the more recent images that I've rendered through Midjourney. Achieving some of these results takes a lot of time. You need to experiment and see what works and what doesn't, and learn how to talk to the AI to get the right results for your desired outcome. So I don't at all mean to sound like I'm condemning Squanch Games for using AI to generate these assets. I'm sure it didn't take that much time, and it was probably a lot of fun to do, and they're a lot of fun. We actually have a series of videos on this very channel where we've made AI images just to kind of laugh and make a fun game show out of it, which you can check out if you want, but I get it. It's a fun thing to do, and I'm not at all faulting them for doing so and having fun with the game. But again, as a larger title, this is a $60 game. A full price AAA title is around that range. You're kind of the first $60 game to use Midjourney on this level. And I might be wrong about that, but I looked and I couldn't find any other examples of that happening. I could be wrong though, so feel free to fill me in the comments if I am. But as the ambassadors here, you'd think that they would want to make a better first impression on what AI could achieve. I think they could have done something that doesn't look so obviously basic Midjourney without any real flavor or flair or deeper understanding of the prompts displayed in the images here. What it looks like to me is they spent maybe, I don't know, an hour at most creating all of these images, and even in this very first room, they repeat a texture. Now, there's different colors here, but this is the same image. There's no reason to repeat textures when you can make a fresh one in well under 5 minutes. It feels very lazy and is not really making a strong case for, oh, AI art can help with boundless creativity. It's like, you're repeating a texture in the same room. That's really bad to do. I mean, anyone who is involved in game design knows that it feels cheap when you see the same textures on the walls all the time across a game. It's not something that people like to do. It happens. And sometimes when it's done tastefully and it's not egregious, you just look right past it. It doesn't really matter. But a 2022 $60 game repeating a texture like this in the same room is pretty egregious to me. And just a few minutes later, you head outside and you can see that the neighbor's house is blown open. If you look on the walls, there's 3 more of these posters, and they're all posters that appeared earlier in the game, except this time they've been turned around and they're backwards, which again feels really cheap. Like, they didn't have the extra 5 minutes to create a couple of unique posters to throw on the wall over here. This is why I worry about developers relying on AI to generate assets for a game. I think that there's a lot of potential for AI to create really interesting images, whether that's going to be concept art or just inspiration or final assets for a game. I think that there's uses for it that could really be really awesome. But if it's going to be like this, I don't really want to see that become the norm. When games repeat textures like that, it's almost always because of time and budgetary restrictions. AI is free, and it only takes several minutes to create an image like a poster that would be on a wall. In that Sky News interview, Justin Roiland said that AI will break down those barriers so that all you need to create content is a big idea. But if his idea of a big idea is to create a bunch of movie posters and repeat those assets several times across the first 5 minutes of your game, I can see why people are really not into AI becoming a normal part of the creative process. However, a lot of these games are made by corporations that have to put the bottom line ahead of everything else. Often, legally, they have to appease their shareholders. Otherwise, they can be removed from the company, and someone else who's not afraid to make those decisions will come in and do it. It's where we're at. But I think as a culture, and as gamers, and as artists, and as fans, and as people who are together working on this thing, this culture, and the art, and the relationship to AI, and whether that leads to a bigger discussion about transhumanism or not, I think we can have a little more influence on how these things are implemented and affected and how the public responds to them. And personally, if this is how $60 games are going to use AI, I don't feel very good about it. I think it's fine in theory and can actually be a really good thing when the only thing holding a game back is budgetary restrictions and someone has a great idea, then let the AI art flow. But if you're going to charge $60 and not even create enough AI assets to generate an entire room, I mean, they didn't have to repeat the assets. That they could have just not put a poster there. I don't mean to keep repeating myself, but I think it's absurd. And I'm someone who likes using AI. I like it. I think it's a lot of fun. I'm working on an animation right now using AI. It's for a music video, and this has taken me about a day to get the first 24 seconds of footage for this, but I'm having a lot of fun making it, and I know I could hire a animator, but that's well beyond my budget, and I just want to make a cool thing that I'm going to enjoy looking at. You know, I'm not charging $60 for you to experience this. And while there's a lot of other good aspects to High on Life, and they're doing what they can, and they're an independent studio, I really think that if you're going to be the $60 ambassador to Midjourney being used to create game assets, you gotta do a better job. You gotta create more interesting assets, and you can't repeat assets in the same room or mere minutes apart from one another, which you did, and it's, in my opinion, it sucks. It sucks, and I don't think the idea sucks all the way. I just think it was very lazily executed, especially for a $60 game. Anyway, That's how I feel about it. I'd love to hear how you feel about it. So please leave a comment. Let's discuss this. I'm not trying to make an argument for or against AI on principle, but I am trying to make an argument against being super lazy with it. And I don't mean to insult Roiland and the game. It's just, come on. It's a $60 game. You didn't even have to repeat those textures. You just did. And that's the kind of stuff that sets a very bad precedence for games going forward. If you like this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing. We post new videos here every week, and there's a bunch of videos in the backlog for you to check out. If you want to support us further, there's a Patreon, there's a Discord where you can chat with us. That's all for now. Thank you. See ya.